Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate, the League One podcast. We've got a plethora of guests to be joining us across the course of the evening. Of course, we will respond to the breaking news that's just happened in the last hour or so. Cheltenham Town have parted company with manager Wade Elliott. We'll get on to that soon. But first, I want to introduce my regular guests, Jake Tonge from the League One podcast, and Ed Walker, the Burton Albion fan and League One expert. And I'm delighted to be joined as well by our special guest, Charles Commins from Cobblers To Me. Charles, we'll kind of come to you first. Thanks a lot for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Just talk to us about how you're feeling as a cobbler right now.
Yeah, I'm feeling all right at the moment. I know that we didn't have the best result or performance, for that matter, on Saturday away at Port Vale, but I think overall we're kind of around about the place that I expect us to sort of be for the season. There are, a bit of discontent in terms of we didn't get anybody in the attacking area. I'm not going to say whether we need an actual striker or whether it's a number 10 or whatever, but it's some kind of attacking position that we need, or that we really wanted at the end of the transfer window. We didn't get it. There was a little bit of social media discontent, which we all know is actually quite a small
happens at every club, isn't it, Charles?
Yeah, exactly. It's not necessarily a thing where you should take that as being gospel of what the whole entire fan base thinks. It's the loud vocal minority, really, isn't it? So, apart from a little bit of, I'm not even going to say it's annoyance, really. It's just frustration. That was the word that kept popping up on this week's It's All Cobblers To Me podcast episode. Frustration that we didn't manage to get anybody else in the door at the end of the transfer window, and frustration with the performance and the result on Saturday at Port Vale. But we're 19th. I kind of predicted that we'd be anywhere between 16th and 20th, so staying up. We're on course to do that. 7.7 games. If anybody has ever watched Lelujo on YouTube, where he plays Football Manager, you will know that the Lelujo rule, I can't even say it now, is to have the same amount of points as you've got games and you'll stay up.
Isn't he a posh fan, Charles?
He is a posh fan. I don't forgive him that at all. But hey,
surely that's an off-putting thing, isn't it? Surely.
You're allowed to say that you even watch him being a Northampton.
I can say I don't watch him religiously, Jake. I tend to watch him at the start of Football Manager season, November time. I start off watching Non-League to Legend, and then when he starts managing Peterborough pretty much within about a month, I turn it all off and tell him he's rubbish. Hi, Kev, if you're watching.
So I want to talk about Mark Leonard then, Charles, because that was the sort of the big source of positivity for Town fans so far this season. Has he made the impact that you were hoping for?
Yeah, absolutely. He is. He's quality. Look, I mean, he's from Brighton. Of course, he's amazing. They've got a brilliant academy. He is even better than last year. We kind of knew that we'd see this, right, from him, because League Two, as we all know, is a lot more rough and tumble. It's a lot more in your face. I think the further up the leagues you go, the less in your face it gets. And that allows a little bit more skill to be shown by players. And Mark Leonard is reveling in the space that he is being allowed to have in League One. I will say Port Vale did a number on him on Saturday and just didn't let him get on the ball really in any particular area that he could be a threat, and it worked for them. So he's still got a lot to learn, but my goodness, I think he's probably one of the best players I've ever seen in a Cobbler shirt.
Right.
He is. And it's weird almost saying that, because of the position that he plays in isn't the the beautiful positions. He's not a centre forward that's going to bag you 20 goals a season. He's not going to be that kind of wow, look at this player type of position. But being
just an Andre Pirlo type of role.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, look, I'm not going to turn around and suggest that he's anywhere near as good as that.
Do it.
However, he's brilliant. I nearly, Gab. Sorry. However, he deserves all the plaudits that he's going to get this season, and it's nice in a way for him to be one of ours. I mean, I know he's on loan, but I mean, this is his second year, so as long as he does
it's nice that he chose to stay at Northampton and felt connected enough to
because I think there was a link with Queen's Park Rangers going for a while. He could have easily gone Championship, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I think from what I know, and I'm pretty certain that this is in the public domain already, and if not, I will get told off by somebody. But I'm sure QPR were interested, Charlton were interested, who should be higher than they are in League One, and there were a few other clubs that were sort of bottom end of Championship, top end of League One that were interested, although that haven't been named. So I think that's just more of a agents, doing the rounds type thing.
No, I think that's certainly believable. Ed, from the outside, what do you make of Northampton's start to life in League One?
I think they've just been ticking along, really, haven't they? It's felt like an outside perspective. There's still quite a bit of dependence on Hoskins to goals, which is quite encouraging because he was sensational last year, and you instantly mark him down as a key man in the team, and he does seem to be having his part. I think a lot of the major results in Northampton this season have involved him in the centre. I still quite like the idea of you having a couple of battering rams up top, Charles, in Louis Perry, who I've always been quite keen on when I've seen him, and especially Tyree Simpson, who is such a great physical outlet.
Jury's out on Tyrese at the moment.
Really?
For me. Yeah, he's not doing anything. Unfortunately, he came on at half time, replacing Louis Apparet, and lost the ball more often than he did anything. He's young, right? I don't want to single anybody out for negativity or anything like that. He's young, he's still learning, but the potential that I think we all believe that he has definitely got just hasn't quite been seen yet. And
is that from a goal scoring perspective or general all-round play?
All-round play. I mean, goal scoring, definitely. He's not scored apart from a penalty in the no longer the Pizza Cup trophy. But yeah, he's not really managed. First game of the season against Stevenage, he had moments, and he possibly should have scored at least once in that game, from what I remember vaguely. I think he even said that he should have put it away, but maybe it was just, early season and he wasn't quite up to the speed or whatever.
What's the service into him been like, Charles?
Well, that is the other thing that I will say.
You look at someone like Mitch Pinnock, I think, as someone who's quite key with his creativity, and he seems to vary between kind of midfield and wide positions at the moment.
Yeah, I think that personally, for me, Mitch is more of a winger than he is a number 10. I know that he gets played in the number 10 role or gets given a free role where he can basically be anywhere across that sort of false 9 area of the pitch. I'd rather he was out wide to deliver across. This is me showing how little I really know about football, but I just don't really see him as a number 10. I don't see him as the type of player that can pick out that killer pass. He can certainly cross the ball. He's certainly got, ability in that respect. Just not maybe there. Out wide, yes. In the middle.
I'd wonder, Charles, if I can put onto that, if you take Mitch Pinnock out of that midfield, you're kind of left with options like Sowerby, McWilliams, Leonard, and Fox when he's back, and it's kind of more runners, with the exception of Leonard, more than actual creativity. You'd have to say, if he's not.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we are missing Ben Fox. I think he would be the one that. Look, you're right. It's not his position. He shouldn't be playing a number 10. But I think out of those names that you've mentioned, he'd be the most likely candidate to go there. And it's frustrating that that's the case.
Sure.
I actually think that if he was fit, then Hilton would be in that role.
Really?
And, yeah. I mean,
Never
I
really
go
happened
back
for him in League
to,
Two, did it? It was such a shame. He came in with such a high on his back of his time with Luton, and I remember coming in, marking him as almost kind of like the key man in this front team more than we thought Sam Hoskins was going to do what he did, and it's just not really happened for him in the 2 years he's had at Northampton.
No, it's not. He early doors last season. I mean, I think it was his first game, and Colchester. Yeah, it was the first game of the season, and oh my word, the assist that he had for Hoskins was incredible. It was delightful. It was just chef's kiss. He took the ball down on his toe and then just played this delightful through ball that went straight onto Sammy Hoskins, laces essentially for him to put it through and into the net for the goal. And I'll be honest, that's probably the best thing that he's done that one game. He had a good moment at Stevenage, but he got sent off ridiculously. And I just don't think, again, actually, I go back to this thing of the rough and tumble and not being allowed the space. I think the fact that him coming down from the Championship, well, don't forget, he'd played in the playoff semi-final for Luton before signing for us. So it's not like, he lost his ability within 2 months. If he was good enough for the Championship, he should have been good enough for League Two. But I was speaking about him to Calvin Andrew when I was last on BBC Squad Goals a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that Calvin actually suggested was that, dropping down those 2 divisions could have been a bit of a shock. And actually, because he'd spent that amount of time away from League Two, because the last time he was in it would have been 2015-16 with Oxford. Yeah. Sure. It was a long time, since he'd done that and faced that kind of in-your-face defending, that maybe actually he just wasn't used to it anymore, and it was going to take him longer than we wanted him to adjust back to it, and he just couldn't really find his feet. And then he got injured, and that's the bigger shame, is that he got an injury that has kept him out now for ages. I know he's had cameos and he's come on, and bits and pieces here and there, but essentially for the vast majority, 90% of his Northampton career so far, he's been in the physio room.
Is it nice to have a consistent back four after the end of last season?
Yes.
I remember I had that. That was awful.
Beautiful.
Good grief.
Although I'm praying that Shering's okay, because he did get injured, and it was in the build. Well, before Port Vale's goal, like couple of minutes beforehand, I think he stretched and possibly felt something, but he got up and got on with it. But I think he went up for a header, either didn't win it or didn't win it cleanly, and instead of it getting cleared down the pitch, it sort of went up in the air, and that's what it fell to the Port Vale midfielder, I think, and
Garrity,
terrific strike, but Shering was out of position because he lost that duel in the air, and I wonder whether that was partly due to the minor injury that he had. So hopefully he's okay. I don't know though. There's not really been any news on that.
Sure, fingers crossed on that front. Charles, Ed mentioned earlier the word sort of ticking along, but I'm a little bit sort of wary of going too far there, if you like, because you've got Reading, who I think it's fair to say are likely to improve. You've got Wigan, who are only down there because of the points deduction. So really, it is yourselves and Carlisle who are sort of. If Burton, Fleetwood, and Cheltenham,
I would argue Shrewsbury gap. They're not showing out good numbers.
That's a good point. Yeah, okay, we'll move Shrewsbury into the mix. But for the purpose of this, Charles, I'm just wary of saying sort of Northampton are in a solid position when actually maybe it's not quite as solid as it looks on paper.
I'm kind of going off whatever the rule Charles just said about from that streamer, that it's like equivalent number of points to games. They played 7 games, got 7 points. So at the moment, you probably say that's all
sure,
right at the moment.
But if we're sort of holding Northampton for the purpose of this to slightly higher standards, Charles, where are the areas that you feel like you've got to improve in order to just possibly push on that extra level?
Attack. It's very, very easy. Anybody that watches us will see that essentially it's finishing our chances is the area that we're struggling with.
You feel you're creating chances other than the Port Vale game?
And this is actually the reason why I'm quite comfortable in terms of where we are. I'd be far more worried if we weren't creating anything, but we are every single game, even against Port Vale, where I'll be honest, we didn't turn up. I was amazed when I watched the highlights on the Sky Sports app, having watched the full game myself already, but when I watched them back, I was amazed how even it made the game look. And because I was just like, no, Port Vale were the better team by far, had pretty much all the chances. They didn't test, I will say, they didn't really test Lee Burge that much. There was a save he made in the first half, and then there was the goal, and that was essentially it for them. But in terms of having the better chances and more of the ball in the key areas where you're going to make chances, it was all Vale. And yet, the highlights suggested that it was a really even game where one goal snatched quite close towards the end won it. Our attacking play was almost non-existent on Saturday. Hoskins had the chance of the game, bar Vale's goal. And I mean, it was good defending. I think he was very close to him and put him off, and fair play to the Vale defender, whichever one it was, for doing that. It was really, again, frustrating because Mitch Pinnock was open, nobody around him whatsoever. So if Hoskins had actually kind of gone to dummy it and thrown it, then Pinnock could have taken 4 years to control it and put it in the back of the net. And I'm sure he would have done. We wouldn't have deserved to have won the game if that had happened, by the way. I'm not suggesting that. But the fact that we did create that chance still, and I think Patrick Brough, again, who has had a chance in pretty much every single game this season, coming, back post, tearing in, just needs to hit the flipping target, Patrick, please. Because if you do, it's going to take the back of the net out. Some of these...
You've got him on towering headers yet, because he's got the height for it.
He has got the height for it.
I've been lifting crosses up to him.
I don't think he's actually arriving that soon, soon enough. He's more of... the only way that I can describe it is think of Paul Scholes arriving late in the box. But I'm not comparing that. I'm just saying think of that. It's that kind of lateness, but obviously at the back post or out wide and he's coming in. He's had some terrific chances, some of which you look at it and go, if Hoskins was that's in the back of the net.
Yeah, Blues used to have a player called Liam Ridgewell who used to play at left back sometimes, and he'd make those late runs into the box, and we called it ghosting into the back post. So hopefully Brough can get a few this season, scoring those. Charles, thanks for coming on. Love your stuff on Cobblers To Me podcast. So all the best to Cobblers for the rest of the season, and speak to you soon, mate.
Thanks very much, guys. Have a good night. See you later.
Thanks very much. So our next guest is James Richings from Buxfree Press and the Wickham Wanderers reporter. James, how are you, mate?
Very good, thank you. Very good. How about everyone else? You all good?
Yeah,
I'm
really
yesterday. Yeah, I'm fine.
We'll get on to Burton Albion later in the show, I'm sure. James, I imagine you're going to say that that victory over Blackpool was certainly the best performance of the season from Wickham Wanderers, and possibly of Matt Bloomfield's era in charge.
Yes, it's one of the best performances, that's for sure. I think Cambridge away last year in the league was another good performance under Matt Bloomfield, but Saturday was a real good, sturdy performance. It was very much a performance that was needed, and winning breeds winning. That's if you include last night's win against the Palace under 21s now in the EFL Trophy. That's 3 wins on the bounce without conceding a goal. And considering the start they had, that's a fantastic achievement for Wickham at the moment. Against Blackpool, they were very much in control. They did show a few signs, Blackpool, but Wickham didn't really get out of third gear. I think the second half flew by as soon as Brandon Hanlon got the second in the opening seconds of the second half. The game was pretty much done. I think the Blackpool fans were even screaming attack, attack, attack. They didn't really offer much, and Wickham just let that continue. So now Wickham are on the up. They really, really have. I mean, last night in the EFL Trophy, it was their 10th game of the season, and they've won 6 of them. And I think that doesn't really get mentioned enough. And Matt Bloomfield's got a good thing going at the moment.
Jake, where do you see Wickham this season? From what you've been able to catch and hear, do you see them challenging for the playoffs this season?
Well, I saw them in person when we beat them 3-0 at Central Bank.
Of course, yeah.
They weren't great that day. I think the last two times I've seen Wickham, so the back end of last year, they were very poor that day. I didn't really figure out what Matt Bloomfield was trying to do. This year, when they came to the Bank, I thought they had a bit more of an idea about themselves. The recruitment I really liked over the summer, the likes of Brecklin and Potts. Dale Taylor, I'm sure Ed will tell you, is a fantastic bit of business. We were rumoured to be looking at bringing him in. So when they started off really poorly, I thought, well, has Matt Bloomfield had enough time yet to get his philosophy into the playing squad? Because you've got to remember, a lot of the squad that he inherited was primarily playing under Gareth Ainsworth in a completely different style of football. It's a completely different brand. I expect Wickham to be in and around the playoffs, absolutely, because they've got a great squad. They've got, it's clear that week on week, especially in recent weeks, they're building on Matt Bloomfield's philosophy, and they're able to get it down to a T. Like James said, the game against Blackpool, they were pretty much done for the first couple of minutes of the second half, and it was over, so they could put the feet up. So I think even in defeat at Central Bank, I was quite impressed with them, the way they were popping the ball about. We probably had the clinicalness that day. I think we won a couple of penalties, which helped us out. But I was really impressed. The first half, they penned us in a couple of times. They had opportunities that they had taken. I remember they started off like a rocket on fire that day. So, yeah, I really like Wickham at the moment under Bloomfield, and I think the longer the new signings are bedded in, and I definitely think they'll be kicking around the playoffs because they've got so many good players, and they're only going to get better under a young coach who's figuring it himself out even more. So, yeah, I think I'd expect them to be in and around the conversation. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. James, I want to talk to you about that back three for Wickham of Chris Farino. Sorry, who's the middle centre back on Saturday? It's completely gone blank.
Richard Keogh, I think.
I think it was, yes. No, Richard Keogh started on. He was on the bench, I believe. You know what?
I think I got it down as a back four, actually. Farino and Lowe.
No, I'm sure it was a back three against Blackpool.
I got it down as a four, I think.
Joe Lowe.
Joe Lowe. There we go.
Please accept our apologies, Joe. So Chris Farino, Joe Lowe, and Luke Lay as the back three, James. What I really liked about them against Blackpool was that they sort of spread out a lot, especially in those periods where you were penning them in, because if you could force a clearance from Blackpool or a misplaced pass, you always had somebody ready on halfway line to step in, recycle the ball and keep things moving. I really like that facet of your play.
Yeah, no, and that's a very much what Matt Bloomfield wants. He wants to have players who don't just necessarily stick to one role. Hence why Luke Leahy was one of the marquee signings in the summer. We all know that Leahy is very much a goal scorer, but he has those defensive capabilities which any team in the EFL would want. I mean, when Wickham initially signed him, I thought he'd be playing more of an attacking role, but he's been dropping into that third centre back if needs be, and he's also drifted into the centre of midfield. He's become very much like a David Wheeler type player. Wheeler was very much a right-sided midfielder for most of his career, but now he's a utility player who could play right back, left back, up top, wherever. So it's all about adaptability, and that's what Bloomfield wants. He's been telling me in the last few weeks that performances are the key thing. Yes, results get you points, they make you go through the cup, but it's all about the performance, and he wants players that are capable of potentially drifting into another position. If one goes out, one goes in, and we saw that against Blackpool. I mean, initially I thought it was a back four, but it turned out to be a back five, and they interchange a lot. So that is very much what he wants to do going forward. I think even at the top as well, Wickham started with a front three of McCleary, Vokes and Hanlon, which is quite rare for Wickham because usually it's Vokes on his own. But Vokes hadn't scored all season. So he then puts two supporting strikers in a way with him, and he bags his first goal of the campaign. So it's all about adaptability, and Wickham have shown that following the two dreadful results at the start of the year against Exeter and Lincoln.
Sure. I think what really interests me is that midfield pairing as well, James, of Potts, who you've got on loan from West Ham, and Josh Scowen, a real blend of qualities, because you've obviously got the talent of Potts, who's obviously prodigious talent and very technical. And then you've got Josh Scowen, who's a bit of a, likes to rat around and break up play, and something you can just someone you can just rely on.
Oh, very much so. I mean, when Scowen returned in 2021, the fan base was absolutely buzzing because it was huge. It was absolutely huge. We know how well he did at QPR and Sunderland, but Wickham has always been in a way his home. And it's no surprise that he was player of the season last season. He was absolutely fantastic. He's very much another captain that Wickham need. He's everywhere. He's like a dog trying to chase after a football. Genuinely, and it's great. He's got that N'Golo Kante type engine, which is very much what Wickham need. And Potts, he's a real box to box centre midfielder who's got the defensive capabilities, and he could also put himself about in the attacking box as well. So it's a really, really good blend, and that's what Wickham need, because at the back end of last season, Wickham was so exposed at that part of the pitch. They really were. I think at the back end of last season, I think it was in the last 2 home games, they didn't score in any. I think they lost 2-0 to Lincoln and then 3-0 against Cheltenham, and they were really poor. That's because they had no real firmness in the centre of the park. But now they've got that due to the recruitment, and with Scowen being fit, we've seen the improvements already this season. So Scowen is, in my opinion, Wickham's most important player, because if he gets injured or he gets suspended, then Wickham have got the backup for it, but it's not him. You can never.
We saw that last season before November, where you didn't have a sort of destroyer in midfield, and Scowen's absence was a massive problem. You put Scowen back in, and all of a sudden the team just motored up the league. And I think that's kind of testament to the point that you're making, that he's such an important player. Ed, what do you make of Wickham Wanderers and where they are?
Trying to think of something that hasn't already been said. Yeah, definitely.
Do you think they'll get the playoffs?
Oh, yeah. I think half the league could get plus at the minute. Gab League One is absolutely ridiculous at the moment. It's so hard to call. I love the amount of surprise packages we've got up there at the moment, mixed in with some of the arguable big hitters who haven't maybe set the league alight as much as we'd want to so far. So, no, pretty encouraged by Wickham, because I wasn't feeling too good on them probably after the first 2 weeks of the season in August time, but certainly since September's rolled around, it's been a big improvement from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, really exciting stuff, and lovely stuff, James, on the Bucks Free Press. So keep that up. Hopefully catch up with you later in the season, mate.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you for having me on. Have a great evening, guys.
Yeah, cheers, James. Delighted to bring in our next guest, which is Dan Berrisford from the Ale And Vale Podcast. Thanks for joining us, Dan. How are you, mate?
I'm all right, thanks, but I did see a little smile come across Ed's face then.
I can't help it. Sorry, I can't help it. I can't help it. I was going to have a power cut if this had ended another way yesterday, Bessa. Don't worry about that.
In all fairness, credit where it's due. Burton come with a game plan, and I won't say they defended too well, because I think it's fair to say we could have scored 8, but they took full advantage of very strange, lacklustre defending from us and took the 3 goals very well.
I love scrappy goals.
Yeah, and on another night, I think we'd have scored 6 or 7. But it was one of them nights. We had one off the inside of the post, missed one from 6 yards out, an open goal. The one right at the end goes straight at the goalie, anywhere else it's in. But fair play to Burton, they come with a game plan, did it. And if you go and lose a game of football, you want to lose playing well, don't you, rather than lose and be battered. Mm-hmm. And I thought, in all fairness, Ed, you might agree, you might disagree. I thought we were the better side, but being the better side doesn't get you 3 points. It's putting the ball in the net that does.
Course, and I'm sure we'll come to Vale in a moment, but I did want to, while we're on the subject of Burton, Ed, do you think my sort of general rule of this is, if you get your first win in September, you kind of get a bit of leeway in terms of performance, because the result is just so huge that you kind of need that first win in order to build the confidence to actually get the performances going?
I don't quite get what you mean by that question, Gab.
So I think that if you get your first league win of the season when confidence is really shot, then if you're able to get a win by hook or by crook, not necessarily playing well, I think you can get a bit of a free pass for that, in terms of, I don't want to be too critical of the performance, because I think getting that win just gives you a platform to...
I see what you're saying. I've been... In the fallout to this game, speaking to other people, it kind of felt like the only real shot confidence was probably actually with the fan base rather than the players. It does really feel like the squad actually as a whole was just fully behind. Yes, there was quite a lot of toxic opinion towards Dino because of the start to the season, but there certainly felt like you'd see the performance out of the team yesterday, especially from a defensive perspective. That was not a group that are losing faith in him, wanting him to go away, wanting to try something else. Certainly, the way they all dug in defensively, especially someone like Joe Powell off the ball, the base midfielder, was terrific. So I kind of get what you're saying. Yeah, it's a bit like last year, really. We got our first win in September down at Exeter at the time, and it was just a relief to have it, really. So you kind of eases things a little bit. What you just want to do is kind of string another one onto it now. And when there's a game against Fleetwood this weekend, who have had a really poor start to the season, you really want to grab the initiative and try and get a consecutive victory under your belt.
Yeah, hopefully Burton can do that. Dan, coming back to Vale, I suppose you can't get 3 points every time, can you? Just talk to us about, generally speaking, the positives from your start to the season, especially Ollie Arblaster on loan from Sheffield United.
To be fair, the positives, I could be sat here for an hour talking. We've been absolutely fantastic. Ollie Arblaster, for me, is the best player in League One, bar none in any position. He's absolutely unbelievable. Even last night in a game that we lost, I thought he was incredible. He ran the show, his range of passing, got on the score sheet last night. It's just everywhere. Ollie Arblaster is amazing. You've then got Alfie Devine, who's coming from Spurs, obviously, and not his best game last night by all accounts. I think he probably on another day could have had 1 or 2 goals. But again, he's just that clever. He runs off the ball, the one-touch football, and it's really brought our midfield to a point where I don't think there's many midfields, if any, in this league that can touch us when they're all on. I mean, last night we didn't have Chislett. He didn't make the bench last night, so Garrity come in, got his 3rd goal in 3 games.
That
and
third man run Garrity has is such a weapon.
Oh, it is. And again, for me, Garrity should have had hat trick last night. He got the 1 goal. He missed the one on the edge of the 6-yard box in front of you, Ed, where he put it over where it was easy to score. And he had one in each half where there was 1-on-1 with the keeper, and keepers made good saves. So Garrity could have had at least that trick last night, but he's getting back into the positions in the box where he's scoring again, whereas last season he was a bit deeper. So it's allowed us to push Garrity on a bit further forward. The defence, bar last night and bar the opening game, has looked solid. I mean, we hadn't conceded a goal at home till last night, and to be fair, every Vale fan knew it was going to be Burton that come and stop the run and stop the clean sheets. It's always Burton that come to Vale Park and do that. Well, of recent years, it's
every time
Burton.
I mention Burton Vale, I get a 7-1 thrown back at me, so I don't know where this is coming from, Beza.
That was some years. Last year, I remember you coming to Vale Park and doing a job on us, and last year you were the better side. And yeah, it was just Vale fans knew it was going to be Burton. But it's up to us now. Get back on the horse next week. Go this weekend. Go Cambridge and try and get back to winning ways there. And to be honest, if you said to any Vale fan at this stage of the season, you're joint top on 16 points with a minus goal.
I've got to say, watching it yesterday, there was a real understanding of exactly why Vale do what they do. I think you are set up really nicely. That pitch helps a lot. Just the expansive size of it. Your wing backs in particular. I really like Tom Sang. You know exactly what you're getting with Conor Grant down that left hand side. The same. And the only thing I kind of felt with Vale is kind of like you're just missing that really big hit striker, that really big hitter up top. I love James Wilson. His technical quality is fantastic. You just sadly can't trust him to put a string of games together with his fitness.
In all fairness, this season he hasn't missed a game. He hasn't missed a training session. He's been fantastic. Interesting you say that on Tom Sang, because a lot of Vale fans, including me, would say he's the weak link. He's not a wing back. He's a centre midfielder that's covering at wing back. And I think when Mitch Clark comes on, you can see there's a lot more as a wing back than Tom.
He does like drifting inside. I will give you that.
Yeah,
he does like doing that.
If you look at your goals last night, I think Sang is probably at fault for 2 of the 3. He's got bullied off the ball on the first and the third. The first one is just stood there watching it. I do think Conor Ripley should have come for it, and he didn't.
Yeah,
but again, Conor Ripley hasn't.
The first one is I've seen that back, and I don't understand how Labala manages to get onto that. It just kind of even a floated across, maybe it's not even whipped in. The second one I'm kind of more sympathetic with because it is just a loose ball that drops Sen's way. But the first one in particular is a bit. I don't know how he's managed to pull that off. We were surprised. Because we're down on ground level and it's the other side of the goal. We didn't realise it had gone in until about 2 seconds after it actually had.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I'm down by the old away end where the Amel is put in the side, and I thought he'd beat the keeper at the near post. I saw it back on tally today and saw it had gone across him. But I mean, Tom Sang is a very, very good centre midfielder, and for me, pushes for the starting place in our midfield. He's not a wing back, and that's where we're a little bit light for me, because you've got Mitch Clark, who's fantastic, but isn't going to start every game. You've got Conor Grant, who's a good, solid footballer. I'm still not convinced whether he's a centre midfielder or a wing back. But he
Well,
can do his job.
I think the thing with
He's
Conor
a converted wing back, is what I'd probably say, Bezza.
Yeah.
Well,
It's that energy that made him so useful at Plymouth Argyle, I'd say.
Yeah.
Well,
the
and
ball he put in for Garrity's goal was unbelievable.
Sure. I think what was important at Plymouth Argyle was the fact that, yes, he drifted infield, but the way they set up, where they'd have an overloaded midfielder or a striker running out to the flank or a left centre-back overlapping, he kind of had the freedom to do that. At Port Vale, I don't know. I mean, I suppose you do sometimes see Garrity drifting over to the left. Is that kind of thing that I think you need, Dan, in order to make it work with Conor Grant?
I thought my understanding was kind of like it's maybe Devine or Chislett who sometimes does that, because Chislett's comfortable down the left channel.
Possibly. I think there was definitely one or two occasions in midweek where Garrity did that. But certainly I think you need a midfielder overloading flank to allow Conor Grant to move infield, because that seems to be what he wants to do.
Yeah, no, and you've also got Iacovitti, who gets forward from left centre-back when he can. And then last night you got Kofi Balmer at right centre-back, who didn't have his best game last night, but wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. He likes to get forward as well. And then Dan Jones is coming back to fitness now, so he'll be back in the squad again soon. And then Jesse Deborah obviously signed this week from Halifax Town. So by all accounts, he looks a good signing.
Dan, last time we spoke, you were saying we need more defensive depth. It's nice to have Jesse Deborah in the squad and, more options now.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing him. I still say, and I said before the transfer window, we needed cover at wing back, and I think that's where we're lacking. I don't know whether we'll see Lewis Cass as cover at right wing back now that Jesse Deborah's come in. That's an option, and I think Cass is certainly more comfortable going forward than defensively.
How does it look when James Plant plays?
Because I used to think with Lewis Cass at Hartlepool, he was better as an outside centre back than he was as a wing back.
He might be. We haven't really seen him at wing back, but he's just he's weak at times.
Right.
Although, he's had good games and bad games this year. It seems he's either an 8 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10. So just a bit more consistency is maybe needed from him.
But I look at that driving run Mitch Clark did. I think it was in the second half in midweek where Mitch Clark just flied forward. I don't think Lewis Cass has got that in his locker, even if he might be. I think he's good in terms of link-up play and sort of neat passing and sort of give and goes kind of thing. Sometimes that can lend itself better to playing as an outside centre-back rather than as a wing-back, where you probably want a bit more of the Mitch Clark.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong, I'm not asking for Lewis Cass to take over as right wing-back. Mitch Clark fit as the first choice every day of the week without fail. And then, as you say, I'd maybe plan.
Sorry, Lewis Cass is right-sided. Isn't Mitch Clark on the left?
Mitch Clark's either side. Right. Yeah, he plays on the right for us.
Okay.
But yeah, he can play either, but he is right-footed. He's on the right, and then we've got Conor Grant on the left. And then generally, James Plant is your backup wing-back at either side, but he's right-footed. And at the moment, we've only really seen him at left wing-back, which he does a good enough job. But I think everyone will tell you that seeing James Plant is better in the opposition's half than his own half, and that's where he's going to forge a career for himself, and to be a good career he gets for himself there.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, yeah, that's really interesting. So, I mean, in terms of Vale, you've still got certain maybe lack of depth in those wing-back positions, as you've noticed, and possibly up top.
It's that big hitter. It just feels like Vale at the minute. I think what's been the core of the success, it feels like, is kind of generally having a good defensive structure and just having that key moment, just that one player could just capitalise on it, because you have had a lot of narrow wins this season, particularly Vale Park. So it's just felt like there's one occasion where it might drop to Garrity or Chislett has a moment of quality, or one of the strikers has a moment of quality, and it's just proving enough at the minute. I'm just kind of wondering, can you keep that up for an entire season, would be my question.
Yeah, it's a good question. You're right. Last night, every league game had finished 1-0 at Vale Park before last night. And last night we've created more chances last night than in any game we have this year. And for me, as I say, we could have scored 5 or 6. And we keep saying it every week that sooner or later it's going to click and someone's going to get a good hiding off us. But at some point, you've got to look at it and go, actually, is it going to click, or are we just not clinical enough? Because against Carlisle, we could have been 3-0 up inside the first 20 minutes and didn't take any of the chances. And in the end, we got a penalty to win that game. So either it's going to click soon and someone's going to get a pasting from us, or we're just going to be that side that misses chance after chance, and we're going to end up with about 50 goals with an XG of about 160. It just seems like it's going to be one of them. I mean, we've just signed, obviously, Ryan Loft from Bristol. We haven't seen a lot of him yet. What we have seen of him, He looks like a bloke that's only played about 10 minutes this year, which he has, and he's just going to have to get up to speed, but he's a unit. You can see that he's good at holding the ball up, which I think at times we lack up front.
It was a good outlet at Scunthorpe, but that was kind of in the division below. I'm quite wary of, though.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there is kind of contrasting reviews of Ryan Loft from his last league club. So, as you've quite rightly mentioned, Ed, great reviews at Scunthorpe, really good hold at play, willing runner, good for a few goals. That was the kind of review. They really liked him. And then he went to Bristol Rovers, and there was this feeling that sort of things bounced off him, and he wasn't able to find that sort of momentum. I think he was a bit of a plan B a lot of the time. But I'm hopeful that from what you're saying, Dan, he can maybe find that close control to bring others into play, because that seems like there's a real niche for that in this Vale squad at the moment.
How have you found Josh Thomas, by the way, Des?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately, was ill last night, and that's why we hadn't got another striking option on the bench, because Loft was named on the bench but picked up a slight, I think they said, cough problem warming up, so he couldn't come on, and then Thomas was ill, so we hadn't got a striker on the bench to come on last night. But yeah, it looks a real live wire. He's energetic, wants to get about, and you can tell he's a natural goal scorer, and I think he is one that can get you goals. However, when we played him, we played the same formation as we played last night, so he's been a little bit isolated at times. Mm-hmm. And I think he looks like the lad that will probably play well off a big man. So whether we get to see him and Loft at the same time playing off each other, I think that could work. But the big question is, we're playing 4 in midfield, and who do you drop out that 4? Because they're all quality. And it's a nice conundrum to have. Personally, I always like 2 strikers on the pitch. That's just my choice. Sure. However, I don't know who I'd drop out the 4 in midfield, because you've got Ojo, who's up there for one of our players of the season so far, playing deep. Blaster's doing the same and is up there for one of the plays of the season. And then you're playing either Garrity, Divine, Chislett behind the front man.
Gosh,
we need to make football 15 aside, don't we?
Yeah.
If we make football 15 aside, we sort this.
But you know what? It's lovely, because as a Vale fan, normally you're used to looking at it and going, well, that's the strongest 11. If we don't play that, it's a weakened side. Whereas now you look at it and go, I aren't actually bothered who he picks, and whoever comes on off the bench is going to have an impact. And I've got to say, all season, Crosby's subs have been absolutely spot on. He's doing a great job. Last night, it would have been nice to see him have the option to bring a striker on, and it wasn't on the bench. Although Massey come on to play behind the front man, and I thought, again, Massey made a nuisance to himself last night, and he looks a different player this season than last year. He looks very good. He looks strong. There was last night where he was holding 2 Burton players off, holding the ball up, laying it off, whereas last season he just fell straight over with that. So he looks like he's got the bit between his teeth as well, and he's had a good start to the season.
I've had more fun half hours, Gab, than the last half hour of that yesterday. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, if we'd have played an extra 5 minutes, it was finishing 3-1. We were pushing, it was coming, and that chance felt well off.
The third goal went in. The third goal went in, Dan. I turned to the guy next to me and said, "Why is there still half an hour? Why does it have to be 63rd minute? I want it to be 83rd. That would be so much nicer."
Yeah, when the third went in, I looked and there's half an hour left yet. We've got
exactly.
Time,
plus added time, which was 8 minutes exactly.
Yeah. Normally, as a Vale fan, you look at it and go, we haven't got a chance here. But that one that fell to Willow at the end, he hit it well enough, and I thought, this is it, we've got the equaliser. Wasn't to be, but as I say, 16 points from the first 8 games, and it snapped your hands off at the start of the season. Especially the fixtures. We've played Blackpool, we've played Reading, we've played Oxford, who were top league, and I've got to say the best side I've seen so far this year, Oxford. I thought they were fantastic. So we've had some real tough games so far, and we've got, I think, we're at Cambridge, then the 3 league games after that's Bolton at home, Bristol Rovers away, Portsmouth away. So that'll be a real test of where are we at.
Yeah, absolutely. But a fantastic start, and well done to Andy Crosby, because he's doing some great work. Dan, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Love getting your insight on the Vale, and hopefully catch up with you later in the season, mate.
Yep, cheers. Catch you later.
Delighted to bring in my next guest, which is Reading fan Maff. And how are you, mate? How are you, first of all?
Hey, Gab. Good to see you, man. Yeah, doing all right, thank you. Hope you are as well.
Yeah.
You off Cloud9 yet?
Well, I was kind of a bit confused as to what to ask you, first of all, whether I should ask you about Reading's biggest victory in 122 years, or should I ask you about the financial concerns over the club at the moment? So I'm going to sit here and just let you take your pick out of those two.
Yeah, that's tough. Let's go with the difficult, and then we'll finish on a high.
Okay,
that's probably the best way around.
Good plan. How are you feeling about the financial issues at Reading at the moment?
Okay, so we continue in a stage where the owner has pretty much just gone absent. So De Jong obviously has owned us for 6 years now, ploughed in stupid amounts of money, frankly. All of it spent absolutely stupidly. Done for breaching financial fair play. This has now moved to a stage where he's seemingly having liquidity issues, and now we're at a stage where we've got non-payment of HMRC that's happened, non-payment of players. These things have thankfully been covered up so far. Although obviously we had the latest charge that came out personally against the owner today. I can't recall if it's today or yesterday. It's all moving so fast. I think it's today. For him having not paid 125% of wages into another pot. He either doesn't have the money or he's given up interest. It feels like it's going to come to a head in terms of resolution over the course of the next few months. Something has to give. It's dire. I mean, we don't know if HMRC will get paid. We don't at the end of the month. We don't know if player wages will be. The CEO is completely absent. But actually, lower than that, we've got really good people in the club. Seemingly a manager who's actually saying the right things, doing the right things, seems to care. We've got young players, performing. I mean, it's been a mixed start to the season, which we can come on to. But yeah, the owner position is frankly dire. We saw yesterday William Story, who's obviously tried to get involved at Sunderland, tried to get involved at Coventry, making comments alluding to investment in our club. Hopefully he ends up nowhere near us. We've heard rumours
I saw Kieran Maguire tweet about that, saying just Reading fans, you've got to stay clear. Hopefully he doesn't come anywhere near the club.
Absolute chancer. We've seen rumours of Redbird Capital. They've also obviously AC Milan they're involved in. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? Who knows if the owner will go for investment? Who knows from other parties, the minority? Who knows if we will end up with full takeover? But it does feel like something's going to give in the next few months. There has to be change on the horizon. I mean, if there isn't, we will end up in administration. And from there, hopefully, we would end up coming out the other side of it. Obviously, it's bad for us. Just shout out to Southend, who are 2 weeks away from potentially their demise, and hopefully that comes through as well.
Yeah, it's a very worrying situation. Very classy touch there. I think it's certainly echoes that from my point of view to Southend United, and I hope Ron Martin does sell up. Jake, just talking about this situation with Reading, what do you make of it all, and do you think about the difficulty that fans are going through there?
Yeah, it's not nice. So I have got a mate who I went to uni with who's a massive Ding fan, and he's literally pulling his hair out literally every day of the week, and he's I think it's really unfair the way that the club don't seem to be communicating very well with the supporters, and as a fan of a club who is very good with engagement and we're up at the top of the charts for it, when I look at it, it makes me feel very fortunate when you see what Reading fans are being dealt with, and you just really hope that they can sort themselves out, whether they get the right investors in, whether the owner really just needs to sell up so that people like Maff and all the Reading fans can have their football club back, because I can imagine at the moment nobody really wants to go because they don't want to support the chairman, and then they get lower attendances and they can't pay the players, and it all just becomes one vicious circle, and you really don't want it. I mean, the best thing for Reading would be, would you take if the owner went, get relegated and come back? It's similar to what Bolton have done, really, I think. If they can model themselves, I know the situation will be obviously different, but if they can emulate what Bolton did, go down to League Two, completely smash up League Two with a new ownership model, come back, and look where Bolton are now, 3-4 years later. So it's a disgraceful situation going on at Reading. I really feel for the supporters, and hopefully it can get all fixed up soon.
Thanks, Jake. I mean, we thought going down, which we've just done, was the going down and was the great reset, and maybe was that point. I think we've got enough in the team to be able to, at least on the pitch, stay up. God knows what else will happen outside of it. But fundamentally, I mean, if we end up in a position where We end up with the points deducted for admin. We end up with a new owner coming out the back of it. If the right people get their hands on the club, is it the worst thing in the world? There's considerably worse options at the moment, which is what we currently seem to be living. And we've been slowly moving towards over the last 6 years. And frankly, it's us now. It will be someone else, the rate is going, in a couple of months' time. A couple of years' time, it'll be another. The whole bit about football governance, there is just an ownership problem at the moment.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Do we have any indication as to what Dai Yong's valuation of the club is, or whether he's open to any sort of conversation at all?
There's a lot of speculation and hearsay.
Course.
So nothing kind of concrete out there. There are little snippets. We definitely know that he's looking for an investor at the moment.
Right.
We don't have anything about whether that's minority, whether it's minority review with a full takeover, whether it's full takeover. Also comes down to who's brokering it, because obviously we've spoken at length, Gab, about Kia Drabchan having been known to be an associate of the owner. That comes into, would he be involved in the finding of other future investors? And then does he have any form of influence ongoing? And he is who he is, and he has his role in football. So there could always be some form of continued presence, which in itself, again, not necessarily a good thing. I'm not going to go too heavily either way on any of that, but fundamentally there are people involved that you never know what their means and purposes are, who could be involved in brokering this. So what we're in now, we could find ourselves back in a couple of years. This could be a temporary reprieve. We just don't know what the future holds, which is why it's so much a roller coaster. What happened last night to what the hell's going on.
It's one of the reasons why you carry so much admiration for what they're doing on the pitch. It really is remarkable, really, that they're even being competitive. Have you been able to kind of form an opinion yet on Ruben Sellers? Because this is a guy who was with the Premier League last year with Southampton, of course. And does it feel like you've almost got a kind of high caliber coach here, even with the circumstances he's faced with?
It's really early days. We have to come with that caveat. From what we've seen of him, he's very, very classy as a person, first and foremost. He's done, come to events with fans. He's been really what appears to be frank and honest. He's saying all the right things. We had a protest at the weekend. Some of you might have seen, we had tennis balls on the pitch. He came out publicly and said he supports that. Actually, he's supporting protest. For a manager to say the fans are right to protest against the owner, that's huge. In terms of on the pitch, so I'm looking at Southampton at the moment and going, maybe they've made a mistake in getting rid of him. We are seeing what he wants to do come across. We are still very early days. Bear in mind, first couple of games we had a particular team playing with the hang-ups that we've had of the last few years. After the first cup game that we had, in effect, our academy second team became the first team pretty much. Quite a few got sidelined. That's having some mixed results, but you're not going to have consistency with such a young group of players. But we can really see what he's trying to do. Some of the recruitment we've managed, Ben Elliott just looks absolutely insane.
Ben Elliott.
Ben Elliott is just looking mad.
Caelan Vickers is one I've heard is supposed to be really
I've heard
good.
quite good things about Tivonge Rushesha as well.
Yeah, Rushesha dropped down to the under-21s after very brief bit of involvement in pre-season. He played last night and pretty much ran a lot of the show. But again, consistency, that will come. Despite what is going on, I think we've put a lot of really good foundations. And actually, if the club were to be sold, one thing that we seem to have from this summer is some players with some resale value. We've got a guy called Tyler Binden, who came in from out in the US. We played 8 games. He featured in 4 of them. We've won 4 of them. I think we've only conceded 1 goal when he's been on the pitch. He just looks completely class. There's a lot of positives that I would not be expecting to be in this position talking about, and that all comes with complete uncertainty around him. So I think Sellers is handling this absolutely as well as he can. And I think there's a lot of encouraging signs. If you have the right custodian for the club and the right circumstances and foundations around us, I mean, bearing in mind we're probably under embargo till 2025, so we still need to continue to sort of wheel and deal. But Charlie Savage seems to have been on a free with a massive resale. I mean, that's quite crazy in itself.
It's those kind of deals that are the key, man,
Yeah.
because you can get those out of contract players when you're under embargo.
Well, yeah. I mean, he was under a contract, but you share the risk, you share the reward with the other club. If we've got a few of those things going on with the right custodian, there is a lot of chance that we can steadily get the foundations to something and be able to build. But yeah, it's very much who knows? We could find next thing we go 3 months without paying the players, and all of a sudden they rip up contracts. So we need change.
Yeah, no, it's I feel very sort of confused thinking about Reading, because you've spoken about lots of things that are really exciting that's going on, but I really do hope for you, Maff, that you do get the ownership situation sorted, and hopefully if that does happen, you've got some foundations to be excited about. But a lot of ifs and maybes and a lot of unknowns, I think. But it's been so great to get your insight, Maff. I really do appreciate it.
No worries, mate. Always a pleasure.
Cheers. Yeah, well, great to have you on, Maff, and hopefully speak to you later in the season.
Catch you later.
Cheers. So, Jake, I wanted to talk to you about Lincoln City as well before we get on to Cheltenham and some wider League One stuff.
What's that face for?
I don't want to talk about it. We've got no strikers. It's
Oh,
depressing.
you poor thing.
All right. Let's have the Freddie Draper debate then, Jake.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. I saw that. I saw that. You really riled Mr. Pearson. And I absolutely love that, because I get on his bus to away games, and I love that you riled him. So, Andy Pearson, if you're watching, have it. Come on.
I happy family at Lincoln,
Yeah. So I in a way, I really admire the club's sort of ability to think in terms of the midterm by loaning someone who could have made a contribution to the first team out, because it shows they're looking at the bigger picture. But I look at the striker situations now with Luke Plange and Ben House injured, and it feels like almost none of
Luke Plange is at Carlisle scoring against them, Gab. That's what he's doing.
Scored for Carlisle against us.
Sorry,
I found that very funny when I saw. I pictured you straight away, Jake, when I saw that go in the highlights.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that a lot.
Sorry, who's the
Tyler Walker and
Tyler Walker's it? There we go.
And Jack Vale. Gab as
Where's Jack Vale? Has he not even got a squad number yet?
Not even. No, well, don't know, mate. We don't know how long he is away, but Ben House is 5 months and Tyler Walker's 2 months. So
okay, but despite my rookie error there, it does seem like a lot of the alternative strikers that you've got are kind of not really out and out strikers. I mean, I don't know whether Makama could play as an out and out striker, but it seems like a lot of them are sort of versatile forwards rather than someone you'd ask to lead the line. Yeah. And you've got someone in Freddie Draper who I think does have the physique and the capabilities to do that, and you can't recall him until January.
I would suspect that I don't think at the start of the season, after Freddie had just come back off scoring however many for Drogheda in Ireland, I don't think he was in a position to challenge for the first. I think we would have recruited a striker anyway. We before Freddie went out to Walsall, we were linked with Jack Moylan, who's a striker. So we were clearly always thinking we need to get at least another one in. So I don't think the club saw Freddie as quite ready yet. Has the decision come back to bite us in the backside? Absolutely, because all of our
that's not really fair, though, is it? You can't anticipate all your strikers.
I know, but I'm just kind of pointing out the frustration more than I'm criticizing.
Yeah, no, it is frustrating because Freddie Draper has clearly taken to league football, League Two football certainly. We saw him in bits a couple of years ago during Mike Clapperton. He gave him his debut at Sheffield Wednesday. I remember he scored last year in the Pizza Cup against Newcastle under 21s. But I genuinely think that regardless of ability and who else we had, I think Freddie was always meant to go out on loan and try and better himself from the loan that he had over the winter of back half of last year. So, and by all accounts, he's doing really well at Walsall. I think even if we're struggling for strikers like we are, I think we're best off leaving him there, because a player needs development. We saw what happened when we were in the exact same situation as Walsall with Tyler Walker. We'd scored what, 15, 17 goals before Christmas. Forest
Danny
record-
Johnson.
Hey?
Danny Johnson.
Yeah,
Well,
like
just
Danny
another
Johnson,
case
yeah.
of
One-all
paying
now.
for Walsall with that. Yeah, just really
Literally.
annoying.
And then Forest recalled him. And then what did Tyler Walker go on to achieve 3 years later? He didn't play for Forest. He got moved to Coventry. Forest made a bit of money on him, but didn't really do anything that was suspected. So I think Freddie's better off where he is. Yes, we're in a bit of trouble in terms of current strikers. Obviously, I think Saturday away at Portsmouth, which I'm absolutely dreading because of their performance last night. I think we're probably going to have to go over front two of Danny Mandroy and Rico Hackett, which doesn't thrill me.
Is Hackett the best option with current personnel?
You could put Teddy Bishop there.
I would rather not. I just don't think Teddy. I don't think Teddy's quite got the legs to press, and when you build a side on Ben House's pressing ability, I don't think Teddy Bishop could last an hour doing it. Half an hour, I think Teddy Bishop could do it, but Rico Hackett, I think, is probably our best option. On Saturday against Carlisle, Hakeem Adelakun made a return, which was really surprising. We all had no idea he was going to be in the picture at all, but he came back, came off the bench.
I'd completely forgotten about Hakeem Adelakun.
Oh, so would we.
Hakeem Adelakun, have forgotten about Hakeem Adelakun that long.
Well, he was on loan at Gills, wasn't he, at the start of last year? Didn't really get a look in at Gillingham.
Not much to talk about with that
and
one.
Then came back. Kennedy said, "Yeah, we really don't want him." And on deadline day, which was what, last week before? No, it wasn't. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, the club were like, "Yeah, we're hoping to get a deal to sell Adelakun." And then a couple of weeks later, against Carlisle, he's on the bench. He started last night against Derby, so it could be a comeback story for Hakeem, and definitely a player that can do it at this level. But
he's done it before with Rotherham, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, and at Scunthorpe, it was pretty handy when they were kicking about in the playoffs. So, I mean, if you're asking me if we're going to play a front two on Saturday away at Portsmouth, my front two at this minute in time would be Adelakun and Hackett, because Hackett is not big, but he can come and get the ball and he can hold defenders off in his frame, and he can.
He's 6'2", isn't he, Hackett, or something like that?
Pardon?
Sorry. He's 6'2", isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He's a big lad. He's technical. He's good with the ball at the feet. You saw that for the layoff for the goal on Saturday. And then you've got Adelakun, who is not match fit, let's be honest, but he's quick. And in behind, Pompey are going to think...
You're going to start him, though, someone who's not match fit, away at the league leaders.
I think we probably will, yeah. I don't think we're going to... Unless... If Danny Mandroy is fit, I think he'll play Mandroy there. But I don't think Danny's going to be fit. So... Does
Dylan Duffy come into it?
Yeah, yes and no. I think Dylan Duffy is one of those who's still on the peripheries a little bit, who's not... He had some good cameos last year, don't get me wrong. Port Vale at home last year, he was excellent, set up the winning goal. But maybe he goes with a front three of Hackett down the middle and Hakeem one side and Mandroy the other, just to keep a bit of continuity in terms of shape. But yeah, it's really interesting to see what we're going to do. We need a striker. We need Jack Vale to come back. I think when Jack Vale gets fit again, and we spoke to the Blackburn lad you had on your summer deep dive. I can't remember what his name was.
Oh, Dan Ainsworth.
Really good. He says Jack Vale, he's that player that you want as a fox in the box. He can score a goal if he's given the opportunity. I think he scored ridiculous bags of goals in Premier League 2 for Blackburn under 21s and stuff, but just needs that opportunity in the league below, like Freddie Draper's done at Walsall. So once we get a proper striker, we can move Rico Hackett to his best position on the right-hand side. We can move Danny into a more creative sort of number 10 role on the left. I think we're looking okay from that moment in, because, yeah, it's a mess, Gab. It's a real mess. But
not ideal. Just a case of getting through until you have...
and people are thinking it's going to hamper our season, and people... I still think we've got good...
Well, it is in terms of playoffs, Jake, if this carries on for a while.
Well, Gab, Tyler Walker and Ben House haven't scored any goals this year.
No, but you'd much rather have Ben House available. I mean, to be honest, I think the jury's out on Tyler Walker, but to not have Ben House, I think that is a bit of a...
I think so. But I think Vale will be coachable into that role. I think Vale will have opportunities to play that.
Is it a matter of days or weeks for Vale to come back?
Weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks for Vale to come back. So,
right, yeah.
I
So
don't
just
think
got to
we'll be able
knuckle
to sign.
down for now, and then hope Jack Vale can kind of come in and make an impact.
Yeah,
So,
if Jack Vale can do a Tyler Walker of a couple of years ago, then we're on for gravy, really.
yeah, well, let's hope that's the case. Ed, I wanted to talk to you about the dismissal of Wade Elliott, or the parting of company, as it's officially called.
It's mutual consent, isn't it? Is what they've said.
Mutual consent, even though Wade Elliott was flamed up for his job just on Tuesday night. He's had a change of heart. What do you make of that? I mean, because he's clearly been quite unlucky with the injuries and then 2 red cards last night, but no goals by sort of late September. It hasn't been good enough, unfortunately.
Not surprised, but what really does this? How confident are you that this can sort itself out? It's really on who comes next, really. What I hope
Who do
really
you
with
think
Elliott.
should come next, then?
I'm not going to suggest names. I don't really like doing that. But what I hope is that people.
You're on League One podcast, Ed. You're not going to suggest a name.
Because I'm not entirely sure he's available at the moment, Gab. I haven't done my digging on the
Luke Garrard, maybe, at Bournemouth. Andy Woodman at Bromley.
I don't know the kind of clubs take someone away from another team. I don't know if they do that.
Steve Cox available.
Cheltenham could do. I think Cheltenham in League One could potentially do that. To a non-league manager that's up and coming, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to do that.
I'm not sure they've necessarily got the financial muscle to.
That's the thing. This is Cheltenham we're talking about, who are the underdog of, arguably the underdog of the league at the minute, and this is part of the reason why I really hope people remember how good he did last year. No, yes, the start of the season has been terrible. No means about it, but Cheltenham were such massive underdogs last year in a league that has some real big hitters, and to finish where they were, 16th, 9 points off, 9 points above the drop zone with the season they'd had, which had some scary moments, but generally as a whole was really strong. It's a commendable job in that full season, and you don't have someone like Alfie May available. You have Ryan Broom gone out elsewhere. You have to admit it's a weaker team at the minute. So
I think I kind of
feel too surprised.
Yeah, no, I get the bit about losing Alfie May and how that's like obviously losing the goals. And
I looked at Aidan Keener, who'd had a really good second half of last season, and thought, I want you to be that guy now. And I don't think he's been that guy yet, which is part of the problem for me.
I think he's the guy to link up with Alfie May, but maybe not the guy to replace
perhaps
Alfie May, perhaps. But I do think that also, as much as the loss of Alfie May has been a huge problem for Wade Elliott, and I don't want to underestimate that at all, I would also say that the loss of Alfie May has actually exposed Wade Elliott a little bit as an in-possession coach. Because I think in terms of last season, I think even this season, I don't think it's not, apart from Bolton, I don't think Cheltenham have been torn apart exactly. I think they were solid defensively last season as well. I thought that was a real strong point. But in possession, it was very much a case of relying on that individual brilliance of Alfie May. And I do think that now he hasn't got it. I think Wade Elliott, to an extent, has been found wanting a little bit as well.
Yeah, there's a couple where you're frustrated. I think I remember that they had the game at home to Northampton, where the lone goal is a Sam Hoskins effort that just falls his way and it slips underneath the keeper at the near post, and it's frustrating to think that way. So you do have a number of results in there, I think, where you feel pretty hard done by compared to general performance.
Absolutely. So in terms of the league as a whole then, Ed, I mean, we've sort of touched on this before. It's difficult to make much sense of it at the moment. Because
I put out a stat which I think sums this league up perfectly, Gab. So you got Cheltenham, who are bottom. They haven't scored a league goal yet. They got a single point. Do you know where that point was against, Jake?
It was top of the league.
It was away at Portsmouth. They were top of the league. And that's Cheltenham's points so far. I don't think you can sum up the league better than that.
Yeah. No, I love that. No, that's just absolutely mental, isn't it? But then I look at it, and you've got Exeter, Port Vale, and Stevenage, who nobody expects to be in the top six and are. Even Oxford, I think people expected Oxford to improve, but to go from 19th to 4th is a big jump as well. How close or far off are we, Ed, do you think, to actually finding some sanity in this league? And actually,
Gab, I've got no clue. I think it's just going to be insane. We all kind of looked at League One this season and said, right, we've got 3 big hitters going in Plymouth Argyle, Ipswich Town, Sheffield Wednesday, who just dominated the division last year in terms of points totals. We kind of looked at the three coming down, and maybe outside of Blackpool at the time, we kind of thought these lot are probably not going to tear things up, especially with the situation that Wigan had and the one that Reading are currently in. So it always felt like there was some opportunity for some underdogs to shine, and at the minute we've got a load of them shining, and it's just a case at the minute of trying to work out which one of those is genuine contenders, can keep this going up for a long period of time, and the coming months will really show us that, I think.
Yeah, certainly. Jake, I mean, if you had to pick a team in the one of those surprise sides, Exeter, Port Vale, Stevenage, if you had to pick one of those sides to maybe hang around a little bit longer than people are thinking, which would you kind of plump
I thought you were going to say which one drops away.
I'm glad you've done it while Beza wasn't here. Do you know what? I'm gonna feel sick after I say. I think Stevenage because I think they've got a very clear identity, and I think that, like Farley says all the time on his podcast and in the group chat, they've just brought they've kept the similar identity from when they got promoted under Evans. They've brought in players that instantly improve that 11, and I just think that the performances they've had in recent weeks have been fantastic, and that's great. I just think the players that they've brought in have done it at the top end of League One before. You compare that to the players Exeter brought in over the summer. Not many of them are top end or have been at this level at the top end of League One for a while. Again, Port Vale, they've brought in well. Connor Grant, fantastic. Connor Ripley, good, but they've tended to operate, in other reaches of this division. For me, they've got the experience of Butler, Thompson, Louis Thompson, all played in teams in the top 6 or teams in the top 8 or 7 or whatever. And I think they've got a clear identity with a manager who knows how to get results. Yes, he's an absolute piece of work, whatever he is, but I just think he's just gonna keep them ticking along. And I think they're gonna keep totting up before away from home. Stevenage are unbelievable. I think 3 of their 4 wins have come away from home, haven't they? So, for me, Stevenage. I know it's the side that probably plays the least attractive style of football, but I just think they've got winners in that team, and in order to finish I think you need experience. And compared to the experience of the other teams, I just think they've got that one and over, if that makes sense.
Ed, on that word experience that Jake used there, if we're comparing Exeter, Port Vale and Stevenage, what I would say is that Steve Evans has this CV of management and being successful at almost everywhere he's been, where you'd say Gary Caldwell, I think he's done an incredible job so far, and so has Andy Crosby. But I wouldn't say they've necessarily built up the same CV that Steve Evans had, and maybe you could say that gives Stevenage a bit of an advantage from that point of view. Yeah,
valid argument. I mean, Caldwell does have his League One title. That was 2016, True. So it is a while back, and it was an eye opener when he came back because he'd been out of English football for such a long time. I think he'd had his spell up in Scotland, might be with Motherwell if I remember right. Comes back to Exeter to succeed Matt Taylor. I love that he just carried things on, basically, from what Matt Taylor was doing before. And then into this year, where we were a bit unsure about them losing some of their forward players, some of their key homegrown assets that they've developed over the years. It's just carried on that, going really strong, and they've looked good to start. And then similarly with Crosby, I suppose, succeeding Darrell Clark, a few question marks maybe about him as it starts. I think they've set up really nice at the moment. I like the way they're going. And yeah, Evans is certainly the one out of the ones at the minute that has that CV compared to the others, but that doesn't mean I don't think Crosby and Caldwell can't make good things out of the teams they currently have either.
Well, they're certainly doing that at the moment, aren't they? Fantastic work from all 3 of them, by the way. Should be absolutely commended, and yeah, hopefully their fans can enjoy that journey for as far as it takes them. Listen, Jake, thanks so much for coming on. Likewise to Ed. Yeah, it's been great to spend the podcast with you. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been EFL Debate, the League One podcast, and we'll see you again very soon.